Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to 90 Day Fiancé latest news. The divorce was formalized in court 2 days ago. Georgi Rusev was fined $100,000, which will go to Darcey Silva. The couple had been having problems in their marriage for weeks, including a secret romance, emotional distance, and money problems. This all led to a public end to a relationship that was formerly featured on a reality show. The relationship between Darcey Silva and Georgi Rusev came to an end in a single, sharp sweep when a court finalized their divorce 2 days ago and imposed a $100,000 fine on Georgi to be paid in full to Darcey. What had started as a hopeful romance on 90 Day Fiancé slowly fell apart because of distance, secrecy, and repeated disappointments until the very rituals of marriage, trust, mutual support, and intimacy became points of contention instead of comfort. Fans watched the slow burn. Episodes and social posts that once celebrated plans and promises increasingly registered tension, terse responses, and widening silences. Insiders described Georgi as increasingly withdrawn, someone who stopped engaging in the give-and-take Darcey expected, and rumors of a secret relationship with another woman spread, not as a single scandalous event, but as the tipping point in a relationship already weakened by unmet expectations. Financial strain ran through the story as well. Darcey was reportedly paying the bills and household costs, while Georgi's contributions were sporadic or non-existent. This imbalance made resentment and humiliation worse in private moments that later became public fodder. Dramatic group texts and family interventions showed how the practicalities of living together, which should have been boring teamwork, instead turned into battlegrounds where pride and responsibility clashed. The court's decision to give Darcey the whole fine had both real and symbolic meaning. It was a clear restitution in the eyes of the law, a clear transfer of resources in the eyes of the court, and a cultural acknowledgement of the harm that had been done, whether emotional, financial, or both, during their marriage. Darcey's public response has been complicated. She went from talking about how heartbroken she was to talking about how strong and determined she was to protect herself. Her social media posts went back and forth between sad thoughts about lost love and strong statements that leaving was the most loving thing she could do for herself. These messages got a lot of support and solidarity from fans. Georgi's silence, on the other hand, made people wonder more and added to the story by leaving things out. Without a visible defense or public reckoning, people filled in the gaps with interpretations that made him seem either evasive or overwhelmed, neither of which eased the court's ruling. The media response was quick and widespread. Short clips, comment threads, and headlines turned private arguments into public spectacles. But underneath all the noise were the quieter human costs. Trust was lost, a life together was broken up, and two people had to deal with the fact that their feelings for each other had changed. People who watched Darcey's quest for lasting love on TV and online learned a tired lesson about the limits of romantic stories when they run into real-life problems. Critics said that the episode showed how reality TV can turn private problems into public issues. But the ending is not simple. Legal vindication does not erase years of closeness, and a monetary compensation does not suddenly heal emotional wounds. Instead, it sets a formal boundary between what was tried and what will no longer be tolerated. As Darcey moves on with legal finality and public support, the story ends on a mix of vindication and sadness. Georgi, on the other hand, fades from the spotlight, leaving behind concerns about accountability, motive, and the hidden details that led to such a harsh verdict. The story that remains, part trial record, half tabloid spectacle, part human tragedy, confronts the contradiction of modern celebrity. Both love and failure are magnified by visibility, and the end of a marriage can feel both legally tidy and emotionally messy. After the fact, followers, friends, and family try to make sense of interviews and posts, while the couple's shared history becomes archival material for commentators. For Darcey, the $100,000 is a concrete, if imperfect, marker of the court's ruling and a useful tool for starting over, but the deeper work of healing, redefining identity beyond the couple, and finding peace will happen in quieter places away from cameras. Darcey Silva and Georgi Rusev's divorce isn't just the end of a relationship that made headlines. It's also a lesson in how modern romance, once it was on TV and made money, can fall apart under legal scrutiny and public opinion. It's also a lesson in how two people who once promised to be together chose to break up when the costs of staying together were too high and the hope of fixing things was too low. The legal end of Darcey Silva and Georgi Rusev's marriage is like the last, unavoidable chapter of a story that began under hot lights and ended under the stern glare of a courtroom. The $100,000 fine Georgi had to pay and the money that went to Darcey is neither simple vindication nor a complete remedy. It is a concrete end to an era that had been broadcast, argued about, and consumed in episodes, clips, and comment threads. The money's arrival will change some logistical realities while leaving a record of wounds that no judge can tally. Their relationship went from a hopeful show to a strained reality with both expected and unexpected turns. Early signs of affection and the promise of a life together across cultures gave way to a pattern of small betrayals and big omissions that grew into an unbridgeable distance. Where there used to be intimacy, there grew a habit of unmet expectations, and where there used to be shared plans, there grew a backlog of unaddressed grievances that were voiced in private messages, family interventions, and finally legal filings. The financial imbalance was not just a sign of trouble. It was a fundamental problem in the marriage. Darcey's reports of paying the bills and travel costs while Georgi's contributions were inconsistent turned everyday household management into a test of respect and commitment. Those who watched saw how practical neglect became a sign of deeper emotional reluctance. The claim that Georgi was having an affair with another woman turned distrust into a clear break. Secrecy is bad for any relationship, but it's even worse when one person has already felt like they were pulling away. That supposed betrayal changed the moral economy of their marriage by shifting blame and speeding up a process of separation that might have stayed long and unclear. The courtroom, which was large and symbolic, served many purposes. It partly made up for the unfair burdens that Darcey had to bear. It showed that the law recognized harm that went beyond mere incompatibility, and it gave the public a visible, transferable measure of accountability that they could use to create a story of consequence. Darcey's reaction to the verdict was a mix of dignity and rawness. She expressed sadness for what she had lost and a strong determination to no longer put up with behavior that made her feel bad about herself. Her social media feed became a place for both mourning and action, as supporters rallied, family members offered support, and commentators debated whether public scrutiny had made private problems worse or just shown them for what they were. Georgi's retreat into silence made the public story more complicated, because silence is a form of speech in a media environment that craves confession and explanation. His limited public comments left fans and critics to interpret silence as avoidance, contrition, or strategic withdrawal, and that interpretive vacuum shaped how accountability was told outside the courtroom. The couple's televised history framed their split for viewers, making it legible as a series of scenes. Arguments, reconciliations, hopeful plans undone, but the lived reality beyond footage was messier and more intimate. Late-night conversations that failed to resolve fundamentals, moments when pragmatic needs did not meet emotional readiness, and the quiet accumulation of disappointments that rendered daily life unworkable. The divorce's finality forced both parties to think about who they were outside of the couple they had shown to cameras. For Darcey, this meant changing who she was without the constant need for validation through romance. For Georgi, the consequences of being publicly shamed and financially responsible meant that he had to rethink his behavior, which now had legal and reputational costs. The formal document that ended their marriage didn't erase the past moments of tenderness or make it easier to figure out who was to blame, because relationships are always two-way, even when they go wrong, and the most true account includes both people's mistakes and the differences in pain done. Public reaction revealed the modern paradox of mediated intimacy. Viewers felt entitled to moral judgment because they had been invited into private struggle, yet that same exposure complicated healing by making every statement a performance subject to viral recontextualization. The couple's narrative thus became both a cautionary tale about the psychic toll of living under observation and a case study in how reality television formats can compress and codify relationships for entertainment. Value at the cost of nuance. In fan communities, opinions quickly split. Some saw the fine as overdue justice and proof that reality stars aren't immune to real-world consequences, while others saw it as performative closure that didn't address emotional harm. Media outlets, on the other hand, turned legal facts into sensational headlines that traded complexity for clarity, which was a necessary editorial move that made lived experience into a tidy story. Behind the headlines, there are still everyday human tasks to do. Dividing up personal property, sorting out finances beyond the court order, and the long, private work of grieving an imagined future that will not happen. These small, tedious tasks will show how strong the court's closure is when faced with the unglamorous realities of starting over. The $100,000 will help with immediate needs and may help during the transition, but money can't replace trust or fix the loneliness that comes with losing a committed partner. The legal victory is a sign that healing is a process that takes time, supportive relationships, and sometimes professional care. The couple's breakup teaches viewers and critics a lot of things. How to deal with cultural scripts of romance learned from TV when life gets in the way. How much public attention made problems worse. And how to divide up responsibility when power, money, and cross-cultural expectations come together. The answers are incomplete and disputed, but the public nature of Darcey and Georgi's breakup sparks a larger discussion about the morality of televised intimacy and the duties of those who benefit from it. In the coming months, people will keep talking about it. Interviews will look for new angles, social media posts will be searched for proof, and pundits will draw moral lines. But the real test of resolution will be private. Whether both sides can live a life that is more stable and self-directed than the one that brought them to court. Their divorce is both a public record and a personal turning point. It closes a chapter that captured the public's imagination and opens a new one that no camera will necessarily script. In that transition, there is room for quiet rebuilding, accountability lived outside of headlines, and the kind of ordinary bravery it takes to build a future from the pieces of a love that failed. After the cameras and commentators faded, the last legal note in the public lives of Darcey Silva and Georgi came down like a sharp, unavoidable punctuation mark. A court's order sealed an instant that their marriage would terminate and that Georgi should pay Darcey $100,000. The figure itself carries the blunt utility of numbers. It moves accounts, settles claims, and changes the arithmetic of the immediate future. But its symbolic heft is heavier still. It reads as more than compensation, as a judicial recognition of a rupture and a measure against the unequal burdens that had accumulated in a partnership once presented to millions as hopeful, dramatic, and deeply intimate. The story that led to this point is not a single scandal or a brief lapse. It is a buildup of distance, miscommunication, and the slow work of disappointment that happened in well-lit rooms, on crowded feeds, and in private conversations that, when they finally came to light, formed the connective tissue of a divorce that many people thought was unavoidable. When relationships are constantly being watched, there is a special kind of exhaustion. Every fight becomes a scene, and every apology becomes a line in a script. Over time, this externalization changes how partners see each other and themselves, creating feedback loops where performance and authenticity blur, and where small annoyances are made worse by the need to explain, justify, and be seen as right. For Darcey and Georgi, that dynamic made problems that were already there worse. What started as a cross-cultural romance full of love and plans for collaborative initiatives turned into a cycle of failed expectations. The first few months were fun and exciting for both of them, but then they settled into routines that tested their practical compatibilities, like paying bills, making travel arrangements, and keeping both homes clean. In many marriages, money is less about math and more about moral accounting. Who gives up, and who is dependable when life becomes tough. In this case, the ledger skewed. Many people say that Darcey took on a lot of financial responsibilities, while Georgi's contributions were not always reliable. Things that many couples see as normal, such rent, utilities, and travel fees, become charged signs of caring or neglect. Having to remind a spouse to do basic things, and having to include family members in reminders that shouldn't be necessary, all of it built up private resentments until the emotional temperature of the home became too hot to handle. Those feelings of animosity are rarely neutral. They connect to identity and a story of worth. When one spouse keeps ignoring the other partner sees it as a sign that they don't care about their needs, their worth, or their ability to demand respect. When this is seen on TV, the translation into a story happens right away. Viewers provide moral frames, fans select sides, and social media becomes a place where private hurts are turned into public lessons. Along with the financial problems, there were even more damaging accusations that Georgi had been having an affair with another lady. Whether this behavior was a long-term affair or a short-term lapse in judgment, the outcome was clear. Keeping things secret turns trust into mistrust, and suspicion erodes the duties that are at the heart of marriage. Cheating in whatever way goes against what both people expected. In their unique relationship, which crossed national borders and was formed by language, cultural norms, and the added pressure of public scrutiny, the betrayal was a clear break. The revelation didn't just hurt, it changed the balance of blame, giving Darcey a reason to feel betrayed and to say that they needed to break up. Because the couple's life had been videotaped, talked about, and edited into easy-to-follow story arcs, the public got bits and pieces of the story. A furious argument here, a cryptic message there, and an interview quotation that linked to discussion. Fragmentation promotes clear, dramatic stories over confusing, nuanced ones. It turns complicated relationships into cause and effect graphs that make things seem like they will happen. But the truth behind the headlines is that there are both minor acts of cruelty and big failures. There were times when they were loving, when they made plans with hope, and when they made up late at night that made them feel like partners again for a short time. These are the threads that make the end more bittersweet than just punishing. Ending a marriage is hard because you have to measure the memories of love against the fact that you aren't getting any support every day. The record in court is neat: filings, testimony, and decisions. Outside of the courtroom, the record is shaped by loss and by moments that no legal document can truly cover. The judge's choice to fine Georgi $100,000 and give it to Darcey is important from a legal point of view and fits with the story. It implies that the court identified justification to sanction behavior that exceeded mere incompatibility. It perceived the damages as compensable. The prize works for Darcey in many ways. In practical terms, it helps her with her immediate money problems and gives her some breathing room as she untangles joint obligations and sets up her own household again. It gives her a sense of validation on a psychological level. A public authority heard her complaints and gave her a real way to fix them. But money doesn't make sadness go away. It can't bring back nights of feeling unsafe or fix the damage done to trust in the past. The prize ends a chapter, but it doesn't change how the person feels about being betrayed or left behind. Darcey's public response has been calm but emotional. She went from showing her pain to making statements of agency, such saying she respected herself, stressing the need to end connections that hurt rather than help, and asking for privacy to deal with a life changed by a legal decision. Her social media became a place where people joined together to show their support, and her family showed their support in public. Her words showed both vulnerability and strength, which is the way someone who is sad about what they lost but still wants safety and dignity should feel. Fans who had followed her through TV disappointments and occasional victories reacted with empathy, indignation, and advice. These reactions show how invested they were in the story and how much people want to see justice for someone they think has been wronged. Georgi's relative quiet made things worse for the public. Whether he chose not to comment on purpose, out of reluctance, or because he was too busy, his absence left room for others to fill in the blanks. Silence can be interpreted in various ways: as remorse, as avoidance, or as an unwillingness to engage in a performance that previously transformed private life into public domain. In a mediated culture, not explaining is clear, and many people saw silence as a way to evade accountability. There are expenses to reputation that go beyond the law. The court's decision will be used in news stories, in commentary that affects future chances, and in the memories of both people. The divorce's exposure sparked automatic moralizing. Pundits and analysts treated fault as if it were a binary verdict, and social media was full of fast condemnations or polite justifications. The way people assess each other in public is harsh. It takes away complexity to make the story more satisfying. But beneath the moralizing is a broader concern regarding the ethics of telling stories on reality TV. How much do the people who tell their stories care about them once their stories have been used to get ratings? Producers make money out of vulnerability, and viewers enjoy it. When partnerships fall apart, those same structures don't necessarily help people heal. The way Darcey and Georgie's relationship changes makes it unpleasant to think about how entertainment and intimacy affect each other. It also makes us think about freedom and power. Was the disparity in contributions solely financial, or did it signify more extensive imbalances in decision-making, cultural norms, or resource accessibility? Cross-cultural relationships must always deal with different ideas about gender roles, family engagement, and what commitment means. If these differences aren't worked out, they might turn into resentments. The public story leaves out these subtleties in favor of clearer lines, yet life is rarely black and white. When a marriage ends, it creates a paperwork inventory that includes dividing up things, resolving debts, untangling common subscriptions, and occasionally debating who owns areas that used to have shared value. The work that goes into getting a divorce is itself a furnace. It requires you to face facts that can seem both small and big. These procedures can be rather boring. Splitting up furniture that was bought jointly, selecting who gets which sentimental item, and agreeing on how to split up the costs of things that were shared during the relationship. Every little choice is a test of whether kindness will last or whether the relationship will turn into zero-sum bargaining. At the same time, the emotional work of dealing with the end is more raw and harder to see. Grief doesn't come in neat little packages. It comes in waves, a song, a smell, a notification, things that bring back memories of hope that are now false. It takes time to heal, and you need help from individuals who can remember without blaming you. If your personal life has been public, it's hard to find private places to heal. Cameras, comment threads, and the media's constant interest make it hard to get away. Darcey's decision to talk about her experience while yet asking for seclusion shows the conflict between the advantages of public compassion and the desire for a private space. Family and friends are very important during these kinds of changes. Close family members who step in offer practical help and emotional support. Friends offer a different point of view and tiny things that make life bearable, including sharing meals, keeping each other company on lonely nights, and being seen without judgment. Darcey found that seeing family support helped her remember that her identity isn't just based on her romantic relationships. Georgie's experience, whether expressed publicly or suffered quietly, will include reputational repercussions and a reassessment of his cultural perception. Silence in public does not absolve culpability. Instead, it perpetuates unresolved inquiries regarding accountability, contrition, and the potential for restitution. Repair necessitates active participation. Public redress may be included, although personal transformation must be evidenced by sustained action over time, a pattern of restitution that transcends mere rhetoric. The court's decision will have an effect on things like contractual responsibilities, possible future profits from public appearances, and the types of projects that producers or partners are willing to approve. The entertainment industry is typically forgiving when someone shows remorse, but it is still a business. When deciding whether to rehire someone, you have to think about the risk, the audience's interest, and the person's potential to add to a story in a constructive way. This divorce is educational for both the people involved and for people who want to be on reality TV. It warns against turning private life into content and the psychological damage that can happen when intimacy becomes a commodity. The tale makes it even more important for producers to follow ethical guidelines that protect people before and after filming. This includes giving people access to therapy, financial advice, and media training to help them deal with the aftermath of being exposed. The media ecosystem that made the couple's courtship more popular is also to blame. Coverage that focuses on headlines often sacrifices depth for clicks, but it can also bring attention to systemic problems like gendered expectations, financial abuse, or cross-cultural misunderstanding if journalists put them in context instead of making them sensational. The fine given to Darcey makes it harder to say who won easily. It is vindication in terms of money and partial closure in terms of the law, but winning is not just one thing. It is a process. Closure, when authentic, results from internal integration, the ability to recall without being inundated by anguish, and to progress without requiring incessant external affirmation. Money can help, but it can't guarantee the inner work that healing needs. After the divorce, both parties will have chances to rebuild their lives with more purpose during the next several months and years. For Darcey, This could entail redefining her public persona from an incessant seeker of romantic fulfillment to an individual whose narrative encompasses a broader spectrum of values, including creative endeavors, friendships, familial connections, and employment that reinforces competence and autonomy. For Georgi, it can mean facing the habits that led to the end of the relationship and showing that he has changed by doing things. Both paths require humility and an understanding that public stories are often incomplete and harsh. The episode gives people a chance to think about how they read stories about love and failure. When used, empathy may be useful. It can make people believe that everyone deserves respect, even when they make errors, and that accountability should include chances to make things right instead of just being punished by being left out. But accountability shouldn't turn into indifference. There should be punishments for actions that hurt others. The ethical dilemma at the heart of how societies deal with human imperfection is the conflict between compassion and consequences. The divorce of Darcey Silva and Georgi puts an end to a chapter that was once full of promise. Its end is not just scandal or simple justice. It is a complicated mix of emotional hurt, financial imbalance, public storytelling, and legal solution. The $100,000 fine is a clear point of judgment, but the more important job, the silent, hard work of healing, reparation, and rebuilding lives, will happen out of the public eye. Clips, recaps, and memories will keep the couple's past alive, but the future holds the possibility of new lives. Relationships built on clearer boundaries, careers reimagined without relying on romantic notoriety, and personal growth that comes from painful but clarifying endings. This gossip is over. If you liked the video, then give your opinion in the comment box and stay with us by subscribing the channel. Thank you.